What I'm going to do today is take sort of 20, 25 minutes of your time just to tell you a bit about who we are, what we do, and perhaps most importantly, how your businesses can benefit from shifting your accounts and bookkeeping to Xero and with A4G into the cloud. A little bit of clarity regarding ourselves and A4G. A4G are a Xero certified partner, so they're at silver status with us now, which means they're dealing with about 70 odd clients on Xero, so they've got a good awareness of Xero. They don't pay us anything to be a Xero partner. We don't pay them anything to promote the software. They've selected Xero as their preferred cloud solution for their clients. Brief agenda, which I'm probably not going to stick to if I'm honest, because I'm not renowned for my abilities to stick to agendas, but have a look at what Xero is as an organization. So who are we as a company? Quick look at the cloud, what we actually mean by cloud technology. Look at some of the concerns, so the main challenges that we have when people are looking at potentially shifting across to cloud, why we think you should choose Xero, and then we'll look at some of the other additional features that we got within the product. So Xero is a very new company. We're a very young company. We've only been around since the rear end of 2006, but in that time we've grown to become the global leaders in cloud accounting. We've got 17 offices around the globe, 13 different countries. What that looks like here in the UK is head office in Milton Keynes, and we've got a satellite office in London. Over 400,000 businesses worldwide are paying to use the Xero software, and that excludes demo accounts or free trial accounts. That is people that are paying hard cash to use Xero. We've also avoided the moves from the banks to bundle Xero with some of their switcher products or their new startup products, because we want people using Xero because they choose to use Xero, not because they happen to stumble across it in another way. In terms of what that looks like here in the UK, we are market leaders by quite considerable distance. These figures are as at December for the global and last September for the UK ones. We have to be cautious when we release figures because we're a quoted company. There'll be a new release out next week because our year end was last month. But 61,000 businesses are paying to use Xero here in the UK at the moment. Interestingly, around about 40% of our sign-ups come from businesses that have never used accounting software before. So perhaps testimony to how easy Xero is to use, that's where a lot of our customers come from. In terms of accountants, we've got just over 2,500 now in the UK as Xero partners, so it's being accepted at quite a fast rate of knots. As I mentioned, we are a very young company, but we are a very serious company. We're dual listed in New Zealand and Australia. We will be listing in the States later this year, either NASDAQ or Dow Jones. I think the bankers are in there doing their work on that at the moment. Interestingly, amongst our shareholders, we boast Peter Thiel, who was the first external investor into Facebook, and also the guy that created PayPal. And as of about 4 weeks ago, we picked up the second external investor into Facebook. So we're sat on a cash pile at the moment of about 300 million. So we will be here next year. We are heavily capitalized. There's no debt in the balance sheet of Xero. We're spending that cash in a number of ways, predominantly hiring more people. So if you turn the clock back about 2 years, there were 14 people working for Xero here in the UK. Today, last time I was told, it's 106, but it's growing each week. By this time next year, we anticipate having about 200 people working for Xero here in the UK, 1,000 people worldwide. Loads of new product development. One of the things that's come out this morning is that Sage launched 4 new product features last year. We released 416, and you get those automatically into your system free of charge. You don't download anything or have to pay anything. As we release the new features, they automatically get embedded into your system. There's loads of little bits and pieces, but the main ones that came out was payroll was launched last month. That is an integrated payroll. There's no payroll journals or hot links or anything. It is part and parcel of the accounting package. So you do not have to buy a Xero and a Xero payroll. It's just a single platform. Stock came through earlier this month. Quotes came out in January. So it's a constant evolution of what we're pushing through. Loads of money going into UK brand awareness. So we haven't switched marketing on for Xero before. Very few people have heard of it. We've been working with the accountants, but now we're putting a lot more money into brand awareness to make people aware of what we're doing. And as I say, we've got new headquarters in Milton Keynes, which I describe as being very Google-esque. So there's lots of beanbags and PlayStations and tables that go up and down, which the programmers love, but as accountants find it a little bit different. The beauty of that is it's 500 yards closer to the train station. You don't have to go up the hill when you go there. We've achieved that through innovation. So in May last year, Forbes recognized Xero as the world's most innovative growth company. And if you look at the list of companies that were on there, you will recognize them. These are household names. but they recognise us as the most innovative growth company in the world. And in terms of does it do all the boring stuff that people like me and the other accountants and bookkeepers in the room need it to do, it's accredited both by the Institute of Chartered Accountants and the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers. And I think there was kind of an outbreak of common sense when it came to these kite marks. There's 3 main accountancy bodies in the UK, and I think they kind of decided, well, if we've got 1 kite mark across us, we probably don't need 3. So SEMA and ACCA decided not to go down the route of a kite mark. But it does all of the double entry and boring stuff that we want and that the likes of Revenue Excise insist on. We were voted best new client product by Accountancy Age. Accountancy Age is kind of the main trade magazine, if you like, for the accountancy profession. And that's what they had to say about us. And the reason for this is Xero didn't exist prior to Twitter. We have no desktop legacy. We're not trying to support a desktop product and build that out for a customer base and support cloud. All we've ever done is cloud technology. That's all we do. That's all we understand. So Xero is pure cloud. You get some confusion around cloud because some of the offerings that are out there are not pure cloud. You still have them hosted by someone and you have to have them sat on your laptop or your PC or whatever it may be. Xero is pure cloud accounting. The cloud for us quite simply means there is no black box sat in the corner with all of the information on it. So there is no data sat on your premises, on your laptop, your MacBook, your tablet, whatever. If it gets nicked, who cares? It's a dummy terminal, there's nothing in there. You can access it if you can access the internet. It doesn't matter what server you're on or what you're accessing through, you do not have to be sat at your computer. If you can access the internet, you have full access to your accounting system. There are no upgrades to do with Xero. We automatically upgrade the product for you. There's no downloads, there's no installation, there's no upfront costs. All of that disappears. There's no maintenance with Xero. So it is pure cloud technology. We do all of the boring stuff that takes up time in your business in the background. And being blunt, we do it very, very well because of our scalability. Cloud is a very, very well-established technology. It's coming up for its 20th anniversary next year. Hotmail, believe it or not, came out in 1996. And if you use any of these kinds of services, any online banking or Amazon, anything like that, you're already using cloud technology. So it's something that most of us use and most of us have experience of, even if we don't necessarily view it as being cloud technology. So if you think of something like Amazon or your online banking, you don't actually have to download a program onto your PC to get in and do stuff. It's automatically there for you as soon as you log in through any browser. What Xero gives you is connectivity. So Xero is multi-user at no extra cost. You can have as many users on it as you want, and all it gives you is the connectivity between your suppliers, HM Revenue Excise, your accountant, your bank, whoever it is, that can all look at the same data. So one thing that happens with Xero is you get away from this thing of sending your data to your accountant because they just use the same data as you're on. They do their accounting and year-end work within that data, the management account analysis and everything. They're using the data that you're using. So you never get opening balances back from your accountant because they're working on your data. So as they adjust stuff, it's adjusting live as it stands. Main benefits of the cloud: the convenience driven by the remote access. You don't have to get back to your desk. You don't have to get back to your study. You don't have to have your laptop on you. If you can access the internet through anything, then you've got access to it fully. So complete convenience. It is extremely secure. The press are very, very good at always saying, the cloud got hacked. That's their default. What tends to happen is the immersion point is the weakness. So the celebrities that got their photos nicked a few weeks ago, they were using their Christian names as their passwords. So the moral is, if you're going to stick naked photos of yourself in the cloud, come up with a slightly better password. But unbelievably, some of the hacks out there managed to figure out that they might use their Christian names. Sony was compromised recently. The first folder that the hackers found when they got into Sony was a folder entitled Passwords that contained every internal password for the whole of Sony. So once they were in, they just had a panacea in front of them. The cloud wasn't compromised. It's the immersion point. And I went to Bletchley Park recently, just off the back of the film that came out. And one of the things that was quite interesting there was they never broke Enigma. What they broke was the methodology that the programmers were using because they got lazy and they recognized that. So it's the immersion point that's the challenge around the security. The cloud doesn't get hacked. Will significantly reduce your costs. We typically suggest about 1/3 cost reduction on hardware and at least that when it comes to software. That doesn't take into account the time-saving cost, and the time savings are astronomical. Will massively improve your business performance because you tend to be doing things live. It's a very easy, very intuitive software to use. It's designed by a businessman, not by an accountant. The businessman did his stuff, and then we kind of came along and said, well, there's this little thing called double entry that we could probably build into it somewhere. So it is designed for businesses. It gets away from what necessarily we want. So when accountants and bookkeepers first look at it, their gut reaction is this is too simplistic, it's too basic. But it doesn't give you a nominal ledger and trial balance front and centre. It gives you the bank position. It gives you how much money you're owed and how much money you've got to pay out. It'll give you your live expenses, that sort of stuff. So the sort of information that's actually important. And when it comes to expanding your business, you don't have to buy another version of it or install it or anything. You just get the cheapest notebook you can get, which these days are about 180 quid. And you just, if it can access the internet, you can open up new stores, you can take on new staff, they can work from home. There's no additional cost to having them in as users. But despite all of that and all I've waffled on about, people have genuine concerns when it comes to using cloud technology. There's a certain comfort that they get from just simply having a box in the corner that's got all that information on it. It's a comfort I lost when I had a house fire. And they managed to recover a lot of the data, but they couldn't get all of it. I'm going back 7, 8 years now. So everything I've got is now sat in the cloud. I don't have it on a box. Main concerns around those: backup, the uptime. Where the hell is the actual data? Because this is your account software stuff. What's the security like, and who owns the data? Because if it's not sat on your black box in the corner or on your laptop, then who owns it? In terms of the backup, the need to do a backup disappears because we have automated 24-hour-a-day backups. We have redundancy built into a system and mirrored servers. So your information is constantly being backed up. There is no need to do a backup. What this takes away is missed backups, which sometimes on a Friday night, if you've got to get out, you don't bother running the backup. It takes away the data corruptions. You don't get data corruption within Xero. It just doesn't exist. So there's also no risk of, I've had instances in the dim and distant past, because I was a Sage baby through and through before I discovered Xero, where people have been backing up data for weeks and months, but there's been a corruption building. And then when it's finally fallen over, they've stuck the backup in, but the backup's corrupt because it was backed up the day before when the corruption wasn't quite severe enough to prevent the backup, but the next day it was. So they're backing up corrupt data. You don't get version clashes. You will never have a situation where your accountant will say, we're not running that version of Xero. There are no versions of Xero. There's just a single platform, and we turn functionality on and off depending on what you want to pay for it and what you want. The manager login thing, this was another major bugbear of me. When people go in to run things like DiskDoc or whatever, they tend to go in and log in as the manager. So when you're trying to find out what people have done, you've got a list of manager, which is multiple access into the system by different people under the same password. So you can't actually identify who's doing what. That all disappears with Xero as well. As I've mentioned, if your data stick gets lost, if your laptop goes walkabout or whatever, none of that matters because the data isn't actually sat on it. The whoops syndrome, where I had a few weeks ago, a company was brave enough to admit that they just moved premises. They brought in the IT guys to move all their systems across, and they found out they hadn't been running a backup because they'd been putting the disk or whatever it is in the system, but the guy doing it hadn't actually pressed the play button. So although they had all the disks lined up and they had this fantastic filings, there was nothing on any of the disks. So that wasn't missed backups, that was just the guy didn't know what he's doing. The crucial thing is you can back up the data if you want. If you don't trust us to hold it, you can take a backup. It is not as simple as pressing a button. There's 2 or 3 steps to get the information out, but it's effectively the same as if you wanted to disengage from us. So if you wanted to move to a different platform, you just drag out the information you need. We do have an add-on partner that will run backups for you. And all they've done is automated that process, and each hour, each day, each whatever you want, they'll run the backup, put it in a zip file, and they'll email it into your inbox. So if you do want that function, fine. What I hope was if you start down that route, within a matter of weeks or months, you'd actually be saying this is not necessary, it's not a necessary step. Access, we have best-in-class uptime. So this is over the last 8 years, we've had 99.97% uptime. The only time you'll struggle with Xero is normally last thing on a Sunday evening, because we have the New Zealand offices do all of our updates first thing on their Monday morning, which is last thing here. So sometimes you can log in on a Sunday and it'll say if you want to run an invoice, you've got to wait 5 minutes. But 99.97% uptime we've maintained for 8 years. That is peerless. No one else within cloud technology comes close. No one else within cloud accounting, I don't know about technology, comes close to that. The data actually sits in the United States. So we use a company called Rackspace. We have over 500 servers with them, 500 terabytes of data. I don't know what a terabyte of data is, but the programmers seem to enjoy it, and that's what they keep telling me. This is why we've chosen Rackspace, so you can all read, I'm assuming, but really they're the go-to guys. So when you're looking at having a large-scale hosted solution in terms of clouds, Rackspace really are the only guys you can go to. We are a global company. The reason we chose to put the data in the United States is because within Europe, the legislative framework is not as robust as it is in America. There's certain things that we could do in Europe which would be a breach of contract. If we do them in the States, it's a breach of criminal law. So we took the decision to actually put our servers in the most robust environment that we possibly could. Some of the pushbacks we get on this, Sage particularly are very, very good at saying if your data is in the States, it is subject to the Patriot Act, which means that the US government can look at the data. What they don't tell you is the wording of the Patriot Act actually says that if you have an American-owned company involved in the delivery of your IT, you are subject to the Patriot Act. So the fact that's a MacBook and sat in Kent's irrelevant. It's an American company. It's subject to the Data Act. Facebook were just hammered on this. They tried to not give up their details of European users to the Supreme Court because their servers sit in Ireland, and the Supreme Court said, sorry, you're using Dell servers. That is subject to the Patriot Act. So the Patriot Act is not an issue because if you use something called Microsoft anywhere in your business, you're subject to the Patriot Act. The other one I've had thrown at me is the data, you cannot insure for data loss. I've asked the question of 3PI insurers and they've said if we stick our servers in sort of the arse end of Azerbaijan, no, we're not covered for data loss. But between the States, Europe, whatever, there's no issues there at all. So that's where your data is physically located. 2 data centers, one in Houston, one in Chicago, so it'd have to be a bloody big bomb to take them both out. And there's redundancy built in, so they're constantly backing up. Is it secure? Simple answer is yes. We use the same level of encryption as online banking. So if you're using online banking, that's the level of encryption you're accessing. And this is the scalability point. We're not allowed to reveal how much we spend on security each year, but it is greater than the market capitalization of one of our cloud competitors. So you're accessing that as a small business. You couldn't afford to spend this sort of cash, but that's the environment that you're accessing and you're using. We have multi-layer firewalls and intrusion protection systems that are constantly running 24/7. There is physical armed security on the servers, so people can't get to the servers even if they wanted to. We've also got a 24-hour monitoring system, so there is always people sat at machines watching the usage, watching what's going on, looking for any sort of anomalies that may come through in the system. Third-party audits, and most importantly, third-party penetration testing. We have a business in Germany and one in America that are third-party, and they are paid to attack Xero in an unannounced way. And we're hoping that if they can find a route in, we can patch it before anyone else finds a route in. The automated backups, it is backed up continuously. So there's no an hour, minute, day, month or anything. It is constantly backed up, and we've got the redundancy. So if one data center went down, you wouldn't know, but you'd just simply be talking to the Chicago data center or the Houston one, whichever one's gone down. We did do a disaster recovery last November. We crashed all of the servers, transferred the data off and crashed them all. And then it was New Zealand versus Australia and us versus America to see who could recover that data fastest. So we've been through these sorts of things. It also means from your point of view, if you've got a large supplier or customer who asks about your data recovery and your crisis management, from an accounting and bookkeeping point, it's irrelevant, it's done for you. Because all I'd have to do is, if the building burns down, I just got to go home and log on via the tablet and I'm back into the system, there's nothing lost. The other big thing is the emails. People say, well, I've got the data here, it's really well password protected, it's sat on my PC. I then email it across to my accountant. That ain't encrypted. Or they send a data stick. The Royal Mail doesn't encrypt envelopes. The other big source of viruses in businesses now is people sticking data sticks in the side of a machine and it downloads that. So at that moment, the moment it comes out of that environment for you to send it to someone, it's immediately insecure. With Xero, if you want to get your accounts to your accountant, they're already logging in and looking at it on a weekly or monthly basis. So that whole thing of transferring data disappears. In terms of ownership, the owner is you. So under the Data Protection Act, you as a user are what's referred to as the controller. We are the processor. So it is your data, it belongs to you. If you ask us to delete, if you wanted to disengage from Xero and you asked us to delete the subscription, we delete the subscription, we will hold the data for 6 years so you can comply with the records keeping. If you want us to delete that permanently, you just ask us and then it will be deleted and you'll get a certificate back from us saying that that's been done. So it's your data, it belongs to you, you own it. And that's effectively what it results in. It is secure, it's well trusted, and we've got support. The support is something we'll touch on in a sec. Why do we think you should choose Xero? As I've mentioned, we don't have a desktop legacy, and that's really important. We've spent $250 million building the Xero platform. We're sat on a cash pile of $300 million. That's being spent to continue to build the platform. We don't have to worry about what are we doing with with desktop. Single platform, as I mentioned, there are no versions with Xero. You've got complete collaboration, so your accountant can be logging into your system to run your VAT return or do the fixed assets or do tax journals or whatever, and it'll just be updating your P&Ls and balance sheets live, so you never get into this situation of 9 months after the year end, I find out what the truth is. Our support is free. You do not pay for Xero support. It's just included in your monthly subscription. The time savings can be huge. There's a lot of automation within Xero that's built in. The time savings can be absolutely huge. I've had instances where people are saving up to 2 days a week because they're getting away from using spreadsheets or other packages. So if time is important to you, one individual just said to me he was quite angry because he just switched to Xero. He spent 3.5 hours every Saturday morning doing his expenses, doing all this, that, and the other thing, and he's now doing it in 20 minutes a week. So the time savings can be really quite significant. As I've mentioned, you get away from all this installation, download, and all that sort of thing. And you can get from Xero your up-to-date live cash position. We have bank feeds that feed the information directly into the system. So your bank statement is what's reflected on the bank reconciliation. You get away from this ticking and bashing stuff and having to input data. It will actually use that bank information to directly feed postings. So if there's, if you go to Costa Coffee 100 times a year, you don't want to be inputting 100 times Costa Coffee, stick it to whatever it is. The automatic feed will recognize that and is happy to post that as entertaining or drawings or director's loan, whatever it may be. And that can all be set up with your accountant. So you're getting this live information and the interpretation that Malcolm talked of can happen on a much more fluid basis rather than it being every 6-7 weeks or once a year, whatever it comes out at. Briefly looking at us by the numbers, as I mentioned, 416 updates in the last year. This year our program shows 500. So there'll be about 500 new updates coming through for Xero this year. Again, you won't see any of that. You'll just get a notification, what we call an EDM, which is just a very flashy thing that marketing produce, which just pushes out and says, these are the key ones. We're not going to tell you about 500. These are the key ones that come out. We tell A4G about the 500. So if you really want to annoy them, you can always contact them and say, I want to know about 497. But we'll tell you about the key ones so you know these things are coming through. The add-on suite is really important to us. We're an open source software, so anyone can write an API that links with us. We have 340 add-ons that, I think it's 360 now, but again, that's the last figure I got. 340 that will automate aspects of your business. So Receipt Bank will allow you to photograph a receipt and it will code it directly into your system. If you have an image within Xero, so an image of a receipt, if you photograph it off the app or something, that image is sufficient for revenue excise. You do not need to keep the original. You can just bin the original and get shot of it. Other add-ons, we've got an automatic debt collection add-ons, about 7 or 8 of those. So they will automatically chase your debtors for you. And if someone's not going to pay you, no matter how many emails you send them, they're not going to pay you. But it frees you up to focus on the problems and kind of this Pareto thing where 80% of people are going to pay you. They just need a bit of a kick up the rear end to do it. Chaser or Debtor Daddy, people like that will do that. Crucially with those as well, when the person pays, they just get a thank you email from you saying thank you for paying, and off it goes. Bank feeds. We have 2 types of bank feeds. The first are partner feeds. These are direct feeds with the banks that push the information in. They are with HSBC, NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Metro Bank, and if you can find them, the Bank of Silicon Valley, but there's not many of those in the UK. Santander will be live by the end of May. Everything beyond that can be accessed through what we refer to as Yodlee, which is a kind of a third-party aggregator, which I won't bore you with at the moment, but you can come and talk to me. But your bank information can be brought directly into the system. 34 odd reports, which are constantly being added to, so the sort of reports that went through earlier in terms of P&L year-to-date, period-to-date, previous year, all of that sort of stuff, but it's constantly live. And if you want to publish it, you can publish it. If you drag that into Excel, it will not give you a dumb spreadsheet. It will come with the actual formulas in it, so you can use Excel for what it's best for, which is data manipulation. There's budget functions in there. We've got the files function, which is all about storing images. So bank overdraft, scan it, stick it into Xero against the bank account. Hire purchase agreement, scan it, stick it in the system against the asset. Photograph of fixed assets. And then again, your accountant's got all this, so they're never going to come through saying, can I get a copy of the HP agreement to calculate the journal? Because they don't need to, because it's sat there as an image. There's no storage limits on Xero, so you can put in as much files as you want. And the reason there's no storage limits is if people scan everything, those images take up 2 or 3 kilobytes. If they insist on using a mobile phone, each image is 3 or 4 megabytes. So there's just no storage limits on Xero at all. Expenses, you can access these through the app, so you can actually allow your people to start keeping their expenses. Don't forget they can photograph the receipt on Xero. and they can bin the original. Bits of paper can go away. The app is free of charge. We do not charge for our app, unlike Sage. So you can download it on Android or on Apple. We started building it for the Windows Phone. We got about 70% of the way there, but there's just not the demand. So that's kind of been slipped, that's pushed back. I doubt we'll launch it for the Windows Phone. Mentioned the integrated payroll. Education-wise, we have 191 free HD videos that you can access that will talk you through everything to do with Xero. So you don't have to constantly come back to your accountants or your bookkeepers and say, how do I do, how do I do, how do I do, how do I do? You can actually learn to use the system. The example I use here, for reasons I won't bore you with, I own a scuba diving centre in Spain. The two guys over there set up Xero just by using the education. So they put the opening balances in, they brought the banks in, they set the banks up, the banks are reconciled, and these are scuba diving instructors. They spend a third of their time wet, a third of their time pissed from what I can tell, and a third of their time asleep. They've never run a business before, and yet they're reconciling 3 banks on a daily basis. There's even a competition with the app between the two of them to see who can wreck the bank first in the morning, which I find quite sad. But they get a real comfort around seeing exactly where the bank is and getting some transparency. You can transfer your desktop, if you're on desktop QuickBooks or desktop Xero, you can transfer your information directly into Xero. What we suggest around this, it gives some sort of understanding as to where Sage are in terms of their thinking on cloud. You cannot transfer a Sage desktop directly into Sage Cloud. You can transfer a Sage desktop into Xero Cloud. So that functionality is being built by us. They haven't built it on their own platform. And as I've mentioned, the multi-user is completely free of charge. Again, if you look at some of the other offerings, you have to get to a certain subscription or certain level before you get the multi-user access. On Xero, you can have as many users in as you want. And people do bring the banks in when they're looking to get overdraft. They bring their accountants and their financial advisors. And it may just be read-only, it may just be for a month. But again, you get away from this constant thing of printing stuff out or anything like that. There is one overriding reason that we've found that people are now choosing Xero, and that is because you get paid significantly faster. What we've found on the data that we've aggregated over the last 2 years and some of the interviews that we've carried out is that people who switch from desktop to Xero typically will get paid 2 weeks faster. So it's a 14-day lift into your cash flow in terms of how fast people are paying you. If you couple that with one of our add-on partners like Chaser, who do the automated credit control, the 14 days actually becomes 26 days. And there's a myriad of reasons for that. There's automated invoicing, the fact you can invoice straight off the app. So you don't have to wait till you get home, raise an invoice. You can invoice off the app. They can pay it immediately. There's a big pay now button that can be linked through to either your merchant account or PayPal or whatever, and they can pay it immediately. You can edit invoices. So if someone gets an invoice and says that's wrong, you can just edit it in your system and then click update and it'll update their invoice. You don't have to send credit notes and all that. So loads of things that have gone in. And also with credit control on the fly with the app, you just click the thing that's outstanding, click it again, it'll say save and send. You press save and send and it will email a copy of the invoice out with your message. So people are very much doing credit control when they're waiting for a coffee or waiting for the train. They're not saying I need to book out Friday afternoon and wade through my aged debtors list. You can do that if you want, but you don't have to. I'm an accountant, so I struggle to get to the beautiful accounting software, but it is certainly beautiful and beautifully engineered. It's very intuitive, and as I say, coming from a Sage background, this is just transformational. The big challenge is you don't have to do things in Xero the way that you do them in Sage. So the videos, the 191 educational videos are there because sometimes you say, well, I do it this way in Sage, and well, you don't have to do it that way. It's a lot quicker just to do it a slightly different way. Same result, but we've taken out some of the buggeration factor. Questions or queries for me at this stage? I'm around till about 11 o'clock, so I'm not rushing off. But anyone got any specific questions now? Probably not about the product because we're going to have a demo in a bit, but more about the security or not technical. I'm a sales guy.
That's okay. You said you've got the 500 servers in Rackspace over in the States.
Yep.
Now, a couple of years back, I'm ICB by the way.
Yep.
A couple of years back, we were told by you that you were looking to actually build a European...
Nope, not doing it anymore.
You're not going to...
The legislation in the EU is just not keeping up with what the states are doing. So the decision's been made. As a global company, we have to decide where we're going to put our servers. And what we found with Rackspace, particularly with the uptime of 98% nearly, we're really nervous about disengaging from them. So that's gone away. It's going to sit in the States for now.
Fine.
Can you build a customer database on items as opposed to people? I run a garage, so predominantly my
In terms of the
customers are cars, if you see what I mean.
Yes, you can, because you can put in whatever contact details you needed. There are a couple of quite cute add-ons, one which is called Spanner, and that is specifically for garages that are doing maintenance and that sort of stuff. It works out at about £10–15 a month, and you literally, it will talk instantly to Xero. So as you're doing something in that and you're logging a car and you're putting a new brake pads on it, it will update all your inventory in Xero, it will raise the invoice, it'll send the invoice out, it'll update your VAT, so all of that duplication disappears. You just do what you do, which is get the brake pads on and raise the bloody invoice and get paid, and then it will worry about all the double entry and accounting in the background.